Good evening, Europe, and a very warm welcome from beautiful Budapest to our event on how to be a game changer. We are glad that you tuned in and that you're ready to listen to a lot of voices of excellent experts discussing how culture and civil society could make the Green Deal real.
And besides that, we are going to present to you our group project, Climate Game Changer, The Real Deal. But did we introduce ourselves? My name is Antonia Borbé, and here next to me is Johanna Schmidt.
Exactly. We both are going to lead you through this evening, and we're very much looking forward presenting you a colorful program on the relationship of the European Green Deal, civil society, and the cultural sector.
Johannes and I are both part of the master's program Cultural Diplomacy at András University Budapest. Together with our fellow students, we initiated this Climate Game Changer project.
But we students obviously are not the only ones who take part in this project. During the whole project period, we were guided by Dr. Martin Mehes, an expert on cultural management and lecturer at András University. And we have the chance to talk to him later this evening. Above that, we worked in close cooperation with the Austrian Cultural Forum, Friedrich Ebert Foundation, and the Austrian-Hungarian Initiative.
In the background, you can already see some parts of the cooperation. We are very grateful that we can broadcast this event from the showroom of the Austrian Cultural Forum in Budapest. So, many thanks for providing this beautiful location.
I fully agree. You should definitely come to this place one day. But, Antonia, what can we expect during the evening? What is about to happen?
I'm glad you asked. The event is going to have two major components. On the one hand, the students of András University Budapest are going to present their Climate Game Changer project. And on the other hand, we are going to listen to international experts from the field of cultural diplomacy, academics, and civil society.
All right, and towards the end of our event, we are having a roundtable discussion together with our partners on how the European Green Deal could be better conveyed to the European citizens.
So, we are having a full agenda, and you are all invited to take part actively and share your thoughts.
Yes, no matter whether you are watching this event on Facebook, YouTube or Instagram, just use the comment section, no matter whether in German, English or Hungarian, and join the discussion on how to be a game changer. We will moderate this discussion and we are ready for your questions and inputs.
This sounds really promising. But Johannes, do you remember how our group came up with the idea to create a project based on the Green Deal?
Yes, I think we as students were discussing the climate crisis and that it is important, especially for us, the younger generation, to become active. During the past year, we were all focusing on the global health crisis, but we should definitely not forget that there is another crisis going on. A crisis which might be even more severe and which might endanger our way of living more sustainably, climate change. It is obvious that there is an urgent need to act, but what can we do?
Maybe the Green Deal could be a solution. Isn't it about the green transformation of Europe?
Yeah, of course, the Green Deal. It is often presented as a key instrument to fight climate change, right? The European solution to tackle the climate crisis. But somehow the Green Deal, it sounds somehow like yet another very complicated EU document. What exactly is the European Green Deal?
Well, good that we have got a young expert on this issue at our university. Maybe he could summarize the main points of the Green Deal. Let me introduce you Rafa Fabianovic. He is a PhD student at András University. His research fields are climate policy and sustainability.
He is also a representative of the Hungarian-based sustainability NGO V4SDGs, Visegrad for Sustainable Development Goals, one of the largest and most active sustainability NGO in Hungary.
We are very glad that you are here with us and that you are going to speak about the importance of the Green Deal. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to receive this invitation. It's a topic which I pursue with passion every day. I think it's all clear for all of us that we are dealing here with climate change. It's a present and future challenge of this generation, of next generations, and we shall find a solution for this. The European Green Deal is a roadmap, basically, of Europe, for Europeans, how to deal with this challenge. Basically, we have three pillars of the European Green Deal: an ecological, an economical, and a social one. What does it mean? The ecological says that we have to decouple from emissions to be climate neutral by 2050. This is also the economical one because we need to transform our current market into this new progressive one, which can deal with this challenge. We also need to take care of the people that no one or no place will stay or left behind. Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission's president, actually called the European Green Deal Europe's man on the moon moment. I believe this underlines the urgency of this project. However, we are talking about the European Green Deal on a daily basis with students, with our neighbors and citizens. It somehow seems to be complex. Somehow we have the feeling that people lack the understanding of what does it mean to change our current society. I have, from my research, a good example of how transition looks like. If we are thinking about Central European states back in 1990, they had to face this huge challenge to transform in 14 years from an authoritarian state with planned economy to a modern democracy and being part of the European Union. This transition was very demanding. Today, we have another transition. We are speaking not about decoupling from authoritarian states or from planned economy. We are talking about decoupling from emissions. This will demand to work all of us together. I think it's possible. The time frame is different now. This is not 14 years. This is 30 years. So we have time to deal with that. But I think we need to bring all citizens on board, or all Europeans. Therefore, I fully support the project of this year, Cultural Diplomacy Students, which is called Climate Game Changer. So I think the students want to convey this maybe sometimes complex message in a playful way. I hope it will inspire people to invest more time, to engage in this debate, to read about it, and hopefully somehow support this bigger process, each individual in its own time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafael. This was a very relatable overview of the Green Deal. Now we all know what we are talking about. But how did we come from the Green Deal to our Climate Game Changer project?
That's a very good question. I think we should speak about this with two members of our project group. We could talk with this together with Marton Mehes, who has organized the seminar at our university, and with Cecilia Gergely, our fellow student in cultural diplomacy. I'm happy that the two of you are here with us.
Me too. So, Cecilia and Marton, could you tell us a little bit about the main idea behind this project? What is the link between the climate crisis and cultural diplomacy? What is this whole climate game changer thing about?
So, thank you for the introduction. We are Cecilia and Marton, and we would like to explain the idea behind this university project and why a team was inspired by the European Green Deal and by combining culture, cultural diplomacy, and climate issues.
Indeed, the climate crisis demands a fundamental rethink in all areas of life. This is what Rafał was already talking about. Only through a change towards sustainable forms of coexistence can the dangers resulting from man-made climate change be averted and resilience strengthened. The previously presented Green Deal outlines a guiding concept for the ecological, economic and social transformation of Europe. In this sense, it was a great pleasure for me personally to lead a project seminar and to moderate such a committed team, such a motivated seminar group, the project team, that is tackling this very topic. And this in the midst of a pandemic where we don't even sit together for brainstorming, but only exchange ideas virtually.
The climate crisis is anything but virtual. However, the virtual can certainly help us to rethink. The political goals and strategies must first reach the people. They must understand them, support them, or even better, they should become active themselves. This is already a cultural question, a question of civil society engagement. If we start to act and do something for our environment, we do something for our future at the same time. We see culture and cultural diplomacy as the interface between green policies and people. But the European Commission also wants to support exchange in real and virtual spaces where people express their ideas and creativity on both an individual and a collective level. At the same time, it is announced that the EU will develop a vigorous Green Deal diplomacy, which will undoubtedly have to include the tools of cultural diplomacy.
Our student project of the Cultural Diplomacy Final Year 2021 has taken the objective of the EU Commission as a model and shows an exciting example of how the contents of the European Green Deal can be communicated to European civil society in a playful and impressive way through the means of cultural diplomacy.
In our project, we have created a virtual space that enables direct engagement with the goals and measures of the European Green Deal. This virtual space is a digital game that conveys the topics of the European Green Deal in a playful way, but also generates decision-making scenarios to raise awareness of the numerous challenges related to the most important points of the European climate policy. We are convinced that this gamification sheds a new light on an abstract, seemingly exclusively bureaucratic subject and encourages people to act or reminds them of the importance of sustainable change in order to protect our planet and the future.
Thank you for these clear messages, Cecilia and Martin. I think a gamification of the European Green Deal is a very innovative idea. I mean, bringing video games and international climate policy together, it is an interesting concept, isn't it?
Absolutely. At first sight, it might seem that video games and international politics don't have anything in common at all. But maybe they are closer related than one might think.
Yes, there definitely is a nexus. Video games and are political by nature, and foreign policy uses video games as means for cultural diplomacy. What is more political than finding solution for problems, trying to make the best possible decision, and being able to change the whole game, the whole world, by one decision? But let's listen to someone who knows way more about this. Someone the Washington Post once described as being among the most publicly prominent voices of Germany's younger generation, the specialist on games diplomacy, Mamoucher Shamsrizi.
He founded the Games Lab Berlin at Humboldt University, works in several think tanks on topics like digitalization, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and justice. And he's a fellow of the German Council on Foreign Relations, where he does research on the relationships of video games and foreign policy. Let's listen to Mr. Shamsrizi's message.
Greetings, my friends and really friends of cultural diplomacy in Budapest, in Austria, and wherever you might join us for this incredibly and hopefully very impactful event on a climate game changer, the real deal. And I was asked to give some initial thoughts. There is not much that I can share with you. I myself have been working on these issues for a few years now. I'm one of the co-founders of the Game Lab Berlin, located at the Humboldt University's Center of Excellence, where we ask ourselves, how does gaming as a cultural and societal technique, but also as a driver for technological progress, change society and the world? And I'm also a fellow at the German Council on Foreign Relations, where I'm researching the chances and risks of gaming and video games. And Europe, my friends, are in the midst of both risks and potentials that come with taking gaming and gaming diplomacy into consideration when trying to achieve the sustainable development goals to which we all are committed, when trying to achieve sustainability and the Paris Agreement, because games are both. That's the beauty of it, and I urge you to keep this in mind. They not only have an impact in the development of technologies like narrow artificial intelligence, blended reality, including virtual and augmented reality, cloud, in connectivity, IoT, all these things have a background in gaming, but gaming, and this is a distinction to many other drivers of these technologies, can also explain to us how community works in the digital age, how cosmopolitism works, how cross-national, cross-cultural, cross-social milieu collaboration can happen. We see it every day in the world of gaming, in the world of esports. These things happen, and there's a huge potential to look at gaming as a tool with which we can really get communities of different kind to join us in our fight for sustainability, but also looking vice versa in using these communities as a participative, democratic source for inspiration on how technology development should look like and how humans are interacting with technologies. All these things are in there. It makes it a huge potential and a huge risk at the same time. I'm very much looking forward to see the results of your work, and I'm looking forward to be in exchange with all participants. Thanks to Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, to the Austrian Cultural Forum, to the Andrassy University of National Excellence, and also the Foreign Affairs Ministry of Germany, with whom I'm working myself a lot, it's very incredible that all these different stakeholders came together to have this milestone of cultural diplomacy in the age of gaming as the most used cultural medium of our time happen. I'm looking forward to the results, and as we say in the gaming community and in the scientific community likewise, good game!
Thank you, Manusher Shamsrizi, for these impressive messages. Video games and international politics are definitely closely related, and we should not underestimate the tremendous impact of video games on all aspects of our lives.
You said it, but let's get even more specific and come to best practices. How could such a game look in practice? The Climate Game Changer project is a good example of how gamification of international politics could work.
Yes, this is the moment we have been waiting for. I think we all want to see how the game will look like. Let's go to the final two student members of our group project, Boglárka Emst and Daniel Weber. Bogi and Daniel, good that you are here as well. Tell us, how would you describe the game? How will it look like when it's finished? We are curious how to play the game. Can you provide us already some insight?
Thank you, Antonia. We are very excited to present the centerpiece of our project, the video game Climate Game Changer, The Real Deal. At this point, we would like to introduce our project group and the partners who took a great part in realizing the project. The core of the group is made up of 5 students of Master's Program in Cultural Diplomacy at Andrássy University Budapest: Antonia Borbély, Cecilia Gergely, Johannes Schmidt, Daniel Weber, and me, Boglárka Emst. We came together in a project seminar under the supervision of Vienna-based cultural manager Dr. Márton Méhes in order to realize our idea of creating a video game based on the European Green Deal. We reached out to a game developer, Taiwan-based Hungarian Mihály Rendes, as well as 2 graphic design students from Austria, Caroline Bergwinkel and Daniel Haas. Our project group received great support from the Austrian Cultural Forum in Budapest, the Budapest office of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, Andrássy University, and the Austrian-Hungarian initiative. So let's take a look at the game's interface.
Right, thank you, Bogi. So let's turn to the most exciting part of our project, the game itself. As you can now see on the screen, you see our working script. We spent weeks working out the framework as well as the details of the game's content. We wrote a first script on what we imagined the game to look like based on the chapters of the Green Deal. For each level, we created a motto, set a location, created a general scenario, and set the type and the goal of the challenges. We then reached out to find our game developer and graphic designers, and step by step, working together, the game found its shape. On this map of Europe, which actually works as the loading screen in the game, you can see the 9 locations where the different levels are set. We visit the offshore wind park of Horns Rev off the coast of Denmark. We go to Tallinn in Estonia, also to Berlin in Germany, to the Alfeld region of Hungary, Galway in Ireland, Turin in Italy, Rotterdam in the Netherlands, Wrocław in Poland, and also the Danube Delta in Romania's Tulcea region. Our developing team created the game in a 3D low poly style, which is a common polygon mesh used in game design. With the help of design assets, they created different landscapes and settings, which create a unique atmosphere that invites players to discover the chapters of the Green Deal in a more or less real-life Europe. Additionally, the music design in each level plays an important role in creating an immersion into the game. There are many encounters with non-playable characters which encourage interactions. The players have little chats with them while they give explanations on their special fields. Like, for example, how organic farming works, how a house can be built to consume less energy, or how to dress sustainably. Here you can see a scene from the level at Horns Ref off the coast of Denmark, where we have a little quiz and interaction with the non-playable character. Well, it is easy to talk about the game design and the concept really in lengths, but what we would actually like to do is to show you a glimpse of the game itself, and by that we would like to play this little video of the gameplay and have a little walk through the game and the first 2 levels.
It starts with an introduction to the game mechanics. So in the game, the player controls a character that can be moved along the screen with the keyboard's letters A and D, like in any similar 2-dimensional game. The first scene acts as a prologue to the story. As you can see, we start at a train station, ready to board a train, which will take us on our adventure to explore the measures of the European Green Deal. Here you have just seen how the character talks to the train conductor who wants to validate the train ticket. He points out that it is more environmentally friendly to use a digital ticket instead of a paper ticket. And as the character proceeds to board the train, he notices some information on his ticket. This information states the amount of CO2 emissions which every passenger saves by choosing to take the train instead of the car. In front of the train, he meets another passenger who happens to be an expert in the field of climate research. She explained to him what's behind the information on his ticket. This expert also points out the importance of how every single person can make environmentally conscious choices in their everyday lives, for example, by picking their mode of transportation. She also mentions the goal of the European Green Deal to make Europe the first continent in the world with 0 carbon emissions by the year 2050. We finish this first scene by boarding the train, which then takes us to our first destination, Hungary.
Right. Our next destination is the Hungarian Alföld region. And now just imagine this. We are walking in between the fields, idyllic fields of wheat, and we can even spot a few grazing cows in the distance, while the birds are chirping and singing their songs. In this beautiful setting, we meet another non-playable character, the farmer Gergő. He welcomes us to his family's farm, where they produce organic crops, using the dung of their cattle to help fertilize their fields. Gergő explains in the little chat and in the little quiz that he has prepared for our player how strict monocultures are, how strict monocultures are more vulnerable to insects and diseases. On their farm, Gergő and his family use crop rotation and also a diversification of crops to decrease the amount of herbicides and pesticides which are needed to keep the crops healthy, but which are also harmful to the environment. At the end of this introduction to organic farming, we will go to our next stop, the wind park of Hornsref that you have just seen in the presentation. The other levels contain interactive quizzes and background information on more environmentally important topics. So this was our little introduction to the game and the gameplay, so you have a little sneak peek of what it will look like. And we really hope that this can give some little bit of education on environmental issues in a more playful way.
We've seen now one example let's learn more about the impact of the cultural sector. What is the connection between culture and climate? Well, the United Nations announced that 2021 is the year of creative economy for sustainable development. So what can the cultural sector do to boost sustainable solution and to foster climate activism?
Artists have to answer this, and I am glad that we have got the voice of another expert of the field. Let's listen to Tanya Prashnik.
Yes, she not only is a renowned artist who completed several projects on the climate crisis, but she also is the president of the Artists' House in Vienna, a place to cross-link various artists from all kinds of cultural fields. I am curious what she has to say about the relationship of culture and climate.
Thanks for this invitation, for sending a short message about how art may affect to resilience, sustainability, new ways of life. Art can prepare a kind of a dialogue between the artist, his or her language in art, the society and politics. The leitmotif can only be over an emancipatory potential of art as a platform for a practice of solidarity, along with the gestures, possibilities, and imponderabilities that result from and are thus associated with such a practice. Then politics and further on the surrounding society need to take care and live these tasks and topics. An art exhibition might seek answers to questions of solidarity, questions about the impossibility of a dialogue within topics of sustainability and resilience, including conversation between generations, questions about building bridges between different artistic and social and more adequate living positions, between people and countries, between the institutions of cultural life, and not to forget within this about shutting down gender inequality. With art, we may depict artistic gestures and offer that sustained, ongoing commitment with difference and divergence at its core, with the need and kind of living in all tasks that we care. Precarity affects us all in all kinds in life, but with the radically different consequences and solidarity as a continuous and sustainable political practice, and it's able to recognize these facts and show up topics to be more than discussed in public. For example, for the ECOG European Cultural Capital for Piran Bitbook, I was preparing an art project, you see it in background, to be shown on background, to be shown on a transportive background, which might be seen critically when used in industry and households in our average life, but in the art context, it shall show up exactly this critical usage while being put in an artistic path. An approximately 7 to 10 kilometers long acrylic band, almost invisible, would hold its message form far hillside down through a small town and held by boats of all kinds over the sea, from one country connecting another country. New potential presentation rooms can be opened while stepping in a dialogue and discussion within artificial economic sector. This we just did with the Künstlerhaus, having the opportunity to get into a dialogue and maybe transform the common opinion or even a non-opinion about art, about the significance of responsibility in educating and spreading ecological ideas in the meaning of solidarity with others, less potential with others, less potential groups. This might affect our way of living. The company we are working with might take over a bit of a change in the way of dealing with sensitive tasks that matter. For example, in Kunstlerhaus, we think these are some of the key issues raised by many contemporary political initiatives in the art world, but it would be interesting to see whether they will actually change the manner of production through intensive accumulation, or whether they will really just dissipate the charm of uninterrupted productivity. In Kunstlerhaus, we just have had the opportunity to show an exhibition with the title When Gesture Becomes Event, that shows exactly the different ways of living, or of the opportunity of living solidarity amongst each other, amongst different ways of living it. Supported it was by the AKF in Ljubljana, and of course vice versa of the AKF from Slovenia, Skica. The point here was putting a new exhibition, a new kind of exhibition in a dialogue of countries, of two countries. In this fact, it was Austria and Slovenia. A big task, how we get a grip on our rapidly growing environmental problems before we cross the point of no return, or how can we set out on the next great quest for survival and resilience for the next generation. This can be only answered in solidarity and human team spirit, started by the ones who can afford, dripping down to all the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya Prashnik, for your encouraging words. Before we continue with our final panel discussion on how to better convey the European Green Deal to the European citizens, let one of our partners get the word in, the Austrian Cultural Forum.
Yes, Christian Autengruber is the designated director of this very place, the Austrian Cultural Forum in Budapest. Unfortunately, he is not able to join us today, but he managed to record a keynote speech about the relationship between cultural diplomacy and sustainability.
In his speech, he is going to tell us what the Austrian Foreign Ministry is doing in order to encourage ideas of the civil society and to support initiatives and creative projects aiming to foster sustainable solutions through cultural means. So let's listen to Mr. Autengruber's impulse.
Sehr geehrte Studierende, liebe Absolventinnen und Absolventen des Kulturdiplomatie-Lehrgangs an der Andrássy-Universität. Mein Name ist Christian Autengruber. Ich bin im österreichischen Außenministerium derzeit noch tätig in der Grundsatzangelegenheitsabteilung, also die zuständig ist für Strategie und Planung, und werde ab August die Leitung des österreichischen Kulturforums in Budapest übernehmen. Und ich darf eigentlich noch in meiner bisherigen Wiener Eigenschaft zu Ihnen sprechen. Ich habe gehört, dass Sie sich ganz intensiv damit auseinandersetzen, wie Ökologie und Kulturarbeit zusammengehen, welche Rolle auch der europäische New Green Deal für Ökologisierung spielt und welche Verschränkungspunkte es dabei mit Kultur, Kulturdiplomatie und Ähnliches gibt. Das freut mich natürlich sehr. Also ich verrate Ihnen, glaube ich, kein Geheimnis, dass es wirklich einen Zusammenhang gibt, vielleicht nicht unmittelbar zwischen dem Green Deal also Kultur an sich, weil natürlich also der New Green Deal vor allem auf verschiedenste Sektoren der Wirtschaft abzielt und ganz gezielt auch Dekarbonisierung zum Ziel hat. Aber es gibt einen mittelbaren Bezug, den ich als ganz stark sehe. Und zwar deswegen, das möchte ich Ihnen ein bisschen erklären, ganz besonders mit der Perspektive der österreichischen Auslandskulturdiplomatie. Wir haben im österreichischen Außenministerium schon seit 2016 ein Schwerpunktprogramm, das nennt sich Creative Austrians. Wir haben da eine Publikation dazu geschaffen, die ich Ihnen hier sozusagen ein bisschen zeige. Also uns beschäftigt das Thema Innovation, Ökologie, Nachhaltigkeit schon seit längerem, ganz besonders natürlich seit der Verabschiedung der nachhaltigen Entwicklungsziele der Vereinten Nationen. Und wir sehen einen ganz unmittelbaren Bezug zu Kulturdiplomatie, weil wir wissen, dass Kreativität, Innovation, das Nachdenken über unsere Welt von morgen unmittelbare Vernetzung bedarf. Und Vernetzung, das heißt das Zusammenbringen von verschiedenen Personen, von Aktivistinnen und Aktivisten, von Initiativen, die sich mit einer ganz allgemein gesprochen Verbesserung unserer Welt auseinandersetzen, das muss Aufgabe von Diplomatie sein, ganz unmittelbar Aufgabe von Kulturdiplomatie. Und wir haben damals 2016 schon dieses Programm Creative Austrians geschaffen, wo wir verschiedene österreichische Initiativen und Ideen, teilweise auch sehr theoretisch, zur Verbesserung der Gesellschaft vorstellen, sozusagen als Gedankenanregung, wie man reagieren kann auf Herausforderungen unserer Welt und auch für Überlegungen, wie man diese Innovatoren, nennen wir sie, Innovatorinnen und Innovatoren, wie man die mit anderen Innovatorinnen und Innovatoren überall auf der Welt zusammenbringt. Das beschäftigt uns also schon seit 2016 und wir haben dann 2019 ein neues Grundlagendokument für die kulturellen Auslandsbeziehungen des Außenministeriums herausgebracht. Das ist also sozusagen unser Strategie- und Grundlagendokument, wo wir ganz besonders auch den Themenbereichen Digitalisierung und Ökologie, Nachhaltigkeit, Aufmerksamkeit widmen. Das heißt, das sind zwei Themenbereiche, die zwar bisher schon am Rande auch in unseren Grundlagendokumenten, in unserer Strategie abgebildet waren, aber wir wollen, dass die österreichischen Auslandskulturdiplomatinnen und Diplomaten, ganz besonders an den österreichischen Kulturforen, in der Zukunft verstärkt sich diesen zwei Themenbereichen widmen und zu diesen Themenbereichen arbeiten. Und in diesen beiden Themenbereichen ist eben diese Vernetzung von Innovatorinnen und Innovatoren ein ganz großes Thema und uns persönlich ein ganz großes Anliegen. Als zweiter Schritt ist es natürlich so, dass wir sozusagen aus der Zentrale in Wien in diesen Themenbereichen auch wirklich konkrete Angebote schaffen müssen für Kulturdiplomatinnen und Kulturdiplomaten, um die dann zu nützen und sozusagen dieses Nachdenken, wie wir unsere Welt verbessern, ganz besonders in ökologischer Hinsicht, wie man das umsetzt. Ich möchte Ihnen jetzt kurz ein ganz neues Projekt des österreichischen Außenministeriums vorstellen, das uns auch in Budapest am Kulturforum recht stark beschäftigen wird in nächster Zeit, aber auch grundsätzlich alle österreichischen Kulturdiplomatinnen und Diplomaten. Und zwar ist es die Reparatur der Zukunft. Ich nehme Sie da sozusagen einmal kurz mit, weil wir haben dazu ein Logo auf meiner Tür. Das will ich Ihnen zeigen, das ist sozusagen das Logo. Das ist eigentlich eine Sache, die wir gemeinsam mit dem österreichischen Radiosender Ö1 entwickelt haben. Der österreichische Radiosender Ö1 ist ein Qualitätsradiosender und hat schon vor einiger Zeit die sogenannte Reparatur der Zukunft ins Leben gerufen, wo verschiedene österreichische Initiativen schon sehr konkret, vielleicht in Umsetzung, aber auch im Projektstadium, gesammelt werden, um die Welt zu verbessern. Also wirklich im Großen und im Kleinen, gesellschaftlich, ökologisch, in unterschiedlichster Richtung, von Mobilität, Architektur, Dekarbonisierung, unterschiedlichste Themen, die uns, glaube ich, in der Gesellschaft aktuell ganz massiv beschäftigen. Und Ö1 hat sich mit uns zusammengefunden. Ich kann jetzt eigentlich nicht einmal sagen, wer da zuerst auf wen zugegangen ist. Ich glaube, wir haben im Außenministerium natürlich diese Sendung auch gehört oder diese verschiedenen Projektvorstellungen und haben uns dann irgendwann zusammengefunden mit dem Senderchef von Ö1 und sind auf die Idee gekommen, diese Reparatur der Zukunft, also diese Idee der Suche nach Initiativen, Projekten und Ideen, die die Welt verbessern, hinaus in die Welt zu tragen. Und haben uns auf der ganzen Welt über die österreichischen Kulturforen und die österreichischen Vertretungen im Ausland, also Botschaften, Generalkonsulate und so weiter, auf die Suche gemacht nach verschiedenen Initiativen, die Interesse haben, sich in Österreich zu präsentieren über eine Homepage, die man im Internet auf der Seite von Ö1 findet. und in weiterer Folge auch Interesse haben an einer Vernetzung in Österreich, beziehungsweise in Zukunft auch von österreichischen Initiativen im Ausland. Und es ist eine wunderbare Sache geworden. Gerade aktuell in dieser Woche, ab dem heutigen 28. Juni läuft die 3. Sendestaffel mit der Vorstellung von internationalen Projekten und österreichischen Projekten im Radiosender Ö1. Und es hat sich eine tolle Projektplattform im Internet bei Ö1 gebildet, wo inzwischen, glaube ich, über 50 Projekte aus Österreich und der ganzen Welt vorgestellt werden zu den unterschiedlichsten Themenbereichen, von wie man Inklusion betreiben kann, von Menschen mit besonderen Herausforderungen, wie man ökologische Landwirtschaft betreiben kann, wie man die Verstädterung angehen kann, wie man den ländlichen Raum wieder attraktiv machen kann. Ganz unterschiedlich. Und diese Projekte kommen von der ganzen Welt, werden bei Ö1 vorgestellt, und wir werden im Herbst zum ersten Mal internationale Initiativen zum Markt der Zukunft nach Graz bringen, damit die sich dort mit österreichischen Proponenten, Innovatorinnen und Innovatoren vernetzen können. Dasselbe wird dann passieren mit österreichischen Initiativen, die Interesse haben, sich mit dem Ausland zu vernetzen. Das wird dann über die österreichischen Kulturforen vor allem passieren, wo wir dann auf die Suche gehen werden nach Initiativen im Ausland, die sich mit ähnlichen Themenbereichen vielleicht beschäftigen oder wo es ein besonderes Interesse an verschiedenen Themen gibt, die diese Initiativen in Österreich aufgreifen. Das heißt, also von diesem Programm Creative Austrians aus dem Jahr 2016 bis zur Reparatur der Zukunft gibt es eine Sache, um die wir uns sehr bemühen im österreichischen Außenministerium über unsere Kulturdiplomatinnen und Kulturdiplomaten. Das ist nämlich diese Vernetzungssache. Wir sind davon überzeugt, dass es Herausforderungen gibt, mit denen wir uns auf der ganzen Welt auseinandersetzen müssen. Und das können wir nicht alleine tun. Da gibt es keine nationalen Antworten, sondern da gibt es nur gemeinsame Antworten darauf. Und das ist uns wichtig, das sozusagen auf der ganzen Welt zusammenzubringen und da auch einen österreichischen Beitrag zu leisten. Sie werden sich jetzt vielleicht fragen, was hat das Ganze mit dem europäischen New Green Deal zu tun? Also das Ganze ist jetzt natürlich nicht angeleitet oder finanziert durch den europäischen New Green Deal. Wobei, wenn man sich den europäischen New Green Deal anschaut, erkennt man schon, dass es auch darin ganz stark um Innovation geht, natürlich mehr in Richtung Wirtschaft und Industrie und natürlich auch mit ganz konkreten Vorgaben, was die Ökologisierung von verschiedenen Bereichen betrifft, also Gebäudeheizung, Gebäudedämmung, Dekarbonisierung des Verkehrs und ähnliches mehr. Da legt die Europäische Union natürlich sehr viel Geld auf und ermöglicht in Zukunft sehr viel. Und genau hier ist, glaube ich, der Zusammenhang zu sehen mit Kulturdiplomatie und Kultur und dem, was wir tun im Bereich Creative Austrians und Reparatur der Zukunft, weil ich bin davon überzeugt, dass es auch Kunst und Kultur schaffen, dass es auch Wissenschaft, dass es auch Innovation aus Bereichen betrifft, die nicht unmittelbar vielleicht wirtschaftlich relevant sind, aber es müssen sich alle Sektoren einer Gesellschaft, alle verschiedenen Bereiche, insbesondere eben die Zivilgesellschaft, mit unserer Zukunft auseinandersetzen, mit dem Nachdenken, wie wir unsere Welt ökologisch besser machen. Und dafür braucht es eben auch Kunst und Kultur. Und ich glaube sogar, dass Kunst und Kultur extrem geeignet ist dafür, über so starre Grenzen hinwegzudenken, starre Grenzen, die Wirtschaft uns setzt oder die Industrie uns setzt oder auch vielleicht in denen der New Green Deal unmittelbar denkt, in seinen Förderungen und in seiner Förderauszahlung. Ich glaube, dass gerade Kunst- und Kulturschaffende, aber auch die Wissenschaft dafür geeignet sind, über diese Grenzen hinweg zu denken und uns zum Nachdenken zu bringen und dann vielleicht eben auch unmittelbar wirtschaftlich relevante Sektoren anzuregen, anzuleiten, neue Ideen zu entwickeln, um diese Dekarbonisierung und Ökologisierung unserer Wirtschaftssysteme anzutreiben. So viel also ist das, was mir jetzt einmal einfällt zu diesem Themenbereich. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie sich mit diesem Themenbereich sehr intensiv offensichtlich in Ihrem Kurs an der Andrassy-Universität auseinandergesetzt haben. Und ich hoffe, dass Sie dabei bleiben, nicht mehr in diesem Kurs, aber vielleicht in anderen Bereichen, in denen Sie dann nach nach dem Kurs aktiv sind. Und ich weiß jetzt schon, dass das Österreichische Kulturforum Budapest in diesem Bereich sicher in den nächsten Jahren sehr aktiv sein wird. Wir werden über diesen Themenbereich in nächster Zeit sehr viel nachdenken und da stehen Ihnen die Türen bei uns immer offen. Ich hoffe bei der einen oder anderen Veranstaltung, die Sie interessieren könnte, oder vielleicht auch mit der einen oder anderen Idee, die Sie an uns heranbringen. Viel Erfolg und alles Gute aus Wien. Herzliche Grüße.
Thank you, Christian Autengruber, for presenting the work of the Austrian Foreign Ministry and the Austrian Cultural Forums. Repairing the future, this is exactly what culture and civil society need to do in regard to the climate crisis.
Therefore, let's now come to our panel discussion with the other partners, Friedrich Ebert Foundation and Andrássy University Budapest. Good to see you here in our closing panel.
Here is sitting Rafał Fabianowicz, a familiar face to all of us. You already know him from the beginning of the event. He is a PhD student at Andrássy University Budapest, focusing on the European Green Deal and sustainability.
But we're having a new face as well. Right next to me, Csilla Malomvölgyi. She is a research assistant at the Friedrich Ebert Foundation in Budapest, and she focuses in her work on climate issues and gender justice in Central Eastern Europe.
And last, but definitely not least, another familiar face, Dr. Márton Méhes, who is an international cultural manager. He is working on transnational and European cultural projects, and besides that, he's a lecturer at Andrássy University and the leader of our project.
I would like to start this panel discussion on how to better convey the European Green Deal to the European citizens with a tour de table, starting with Csilla Malomvölgyi. Friedrich Ebert Foundation does research on civil society and citizens movements in Hungary, but also all over Europe and globally. With Fridays for Future, we are having a global youth movement that is persistently advocating for climate action. So it seems like the climate crisis is on civil society's agenda, especially in the younger generation. But at the same time, we're having right-wing populism on the rise all over Europe, and with it, the denial of man-made climate change. So how would you assess the current relation of the European public to the climate crisis? Are the European citizens aware of the climate crisis and ready for climate action?
Yes, thank you, Johannes, and thank you all for inviting us. It's really a pleasure to be part of today's event. I need to settle down that I'm working here in Budapest, so all my input is coming from the Hungarian perspective, but I will try to give a broader opinion about the question, concerning your question. As you mentioned already a few minutes earlier, I think that it's not a question we do live in a climate crisis. I think it's obvious that it is we do live in a climate crisis, and this is actually a fact that is in most of the European public not really denied. I mean, even in countries here from the East Central European region, where we are now, where the Green Deal was not that enthusiastically welcomed, even in countries like Hungary. We had a survey actually a year ago, so after the pandemic, in which it was very clear that more than 70% of the population of Hungary is supporting green policies. So I think, and just remember last week's hot weather here in Hungary. We had problems with, the water usage was limited in some of the municipalities, so it is actually really happening to all of us. But I think that it's also important to enhance that it's not only a climate crisis, but we live several kinds of crises. Just as you mentioned, the COVID brought up the social crisis. We don't know what kind of socio-economic crisis is happening now or in the near future. We have a system crisis, so the question of the economic order that we are living, is it really the way we want to live in the future? So there are many different crises happening all around, so I think we should somehow involve all of them when we talk about the climate crisis as well.
And beside that, we have seen that culture can be an instrument to raise awareness and to motivate people for climate action. Marton, could you tell us a little bit more about the role of culture in climate-related issues? What can the cultural sector contribute to the green transformation of Europe? Are there any examples for Lighthouse projects and best practices?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. Actually, I was very much impressed by this figure, Csilla, 70% of Hungarians supporting green issues, which is great, but I mean, I don't know how concrete this support is. And this is, I think, the point where we come to culture and arts by maybe transforming a general feeling for a crisis into more concrete experiences. And here, culture and arts really have the possibility to transfer, to translate maybe also, and to make it more concrete. I had the pleasure in the recent years to collaborate with several European capitals of culture or candidate cities. And for instance, Tanya was already mentioning Piran in Slovenia, and I was involved into this project, into the candidacy, and we had the program or a project and really also implemented it, at least the first phase, called the Big Picture. And the theory was that everybody is facing his or her own climate crisis. So we have, of course, the Finnish or Scandinavian people with the melting ice. We have, I don't know, in the middle of Germany, some rivers drying out. We have forest fire problems in other places of the world or Europe as well. We have floodings on the Adriatic, for instance, and everybody is just focusing on that. But it could be an artistic project in a first step to show this bigger picture of all these, let's say, local crises, and so that they become really a European issue and a very concrete one, and so that someone on the Adriatic understands why the melting ice in the Arctic is one and the same problem. And I think that works quite well. And it's not just the candidacy of Piran, which was at the end, unfortunately, not successful getting the title, but I can mention another one. Oulu, the Finnish city of Oulu, won the title for 2026 just recently, and the motto of this candidacy is culture, climate change, which has several layers of interpretation, of course. It is also about how to cooperate, how to change the climate in a local society, but also on European level. But on the other hand, they would like to become the greenest European capital of culture ever, even coming up in the next years with a toolkit for festivals and European capitals of culture, how to become, how to reduce emission and how to become greener also. And this is another part for culture and the arts, not just to focus on how we can make this experience approachable for people, but also to, in the production part of culture and arts, how can we maybe play a very good role and become a positive example.
I think these are very impressive examples on how to combine culture and climate. So we are talking about combating climate change and about the European Green Deal. So Rafael, you are writing your doctoral thesis on the European Green Deal. Which experiences did you make in this regard? So do the people know what you are talking about when you tell them the topic of your PhD project? Is the European Green Deal an issue regular people can associate something with, or are these discussions just limited to politics and academics?
I think that it's a problem that it's kind of a new thing. So if you look at past legislation, EU ETS, the emission trading system, this was already discussed, passed in the parliament. There is research about that. That is a smaller part of the bigger picture. Now we are talking about something very big. The European Green Deal, as I mentioned in my impulse speech, it's an economical transformation, ecological, social transformation. This is huge. It's like you can't touch it. And for me as a researcher, it's also sometimes difficult to find information what I need. For example, I was looking for a simple information if Poland actually already joined the 2050 aim. I was looking for 1 year or 2 years. It was hardly possible to find the good information until finally I was listening to an EU Council session where Ursula von der Leyen mentioned that there is no EU country anymore which did not agree to the 2050 aim. So I can imply, okay, I see. So finally they did it. So it's kind of like detail work. You need to go into the topic. And I think this is kind of difficult for people to grasp. Like if I speak to people close to my personal life, if I'm mentioning European Green Deal, yeah, what is it? Usually I sum it up as, yes, green politics. Yeah, green, this is like bicycle, like driving in the streets. And yeah, exactly, it's something like that. So basically, I think this is where your project has value. As I was mentioning in the impulse speech, if your game can help to wake the interest, so you can read it up actually. You go to EU Commission website and you see, okay, this is something interesting and maybe you want to engage yourself in the process. And I think this is where we need public discussions, and touching also on the problem in Hungary or in Central and Eastern European countries where public discourse is not strong. So sometimes the public discourse could be stronger, more free media, more actually civil society engaging in this process. Then politicians are forced to develop strategies. People are actually discussing and making a public debate, and this is where we can raise awareness and basically overcome this deficit that people have a lacking understanding of a very complex process, to be fair. So it's not someone's fault if he is not up to date with anything. It's just usually often really the case that academics and elites are sometimes more informed about that.
Thank you for your answer, Rafael. Besides that, the European Green Deal is often presented as Europe's answer to the climate crisis, but only a few people are familiar with its aims and its content. Chilla, what do you think can be done to bring the European Green Deal to the people and to mobilize civil society? How can the general public be efficiently included, and what are the challenges in that regard?
Okay, I might start with the challenges. I think there are several. I mean, in my understanding, you know, the Green Deal is an important document, but maybe it's not the only way to think about how to renew our life or the way we live, to make it more sustainable and more green. So there are several other kind of philosophies and movements, the degrowth movement, for example, which is a totally different way of approaching the same issue, and which is also kind of opposing, when I'm quoting Ms. von der Leyen, who said that the Green Deal is our new growth strategy. So I think that the Green Deal is kind of lacking some kind of a critiques or some kind of a reflection on why we are in this climate crisis. So what are the fundamental ways in the way we live, in the economy we live in the industry that is pursuing some interests. Yeah, so I don't want to sound too critical, but there is some kind of critique that is coming up if I'm trying to approach this whole issue from a more social point of view. Surely it is very important to sensibilize people to make alliances with art, with science, with civil society. So these are all ways to how to say to mainstream the green, the way of living more green. Another thing, just because Márton, you kind of referred to what I said before, is that so there is a support here in Hungary for green policies, but there is also a but, which means that people are not really willing to pay because, you know, people don't have money. So surely if we talk about having electric cars and whatever, it's, you know, it's the access, it might be only accessible for the few, or for a few, which might be, you know, only an intermediary way till the transition goes on, but still it is some kind of an exclusive way of approaching sustainability and environmentalism.
I think it is clear for all of us, it is obvious that the European culture needs a successful Green Deal in order to remain flourishing, in order to remain protected. Let's just think about historical buildings, building infrastructure. But at the same time, the European Green Deal needs the power of culture for its success. So there's somehow a mutual relationship between culture and the Green Deal. However, the word culture does not appear in the Green Deal at all, or just in the word agriculture. So what needs to be done, Márton, to further mainstream culture in climate policy and in climate planning? And how can the role of culture for climate policy be better communicated?
Which is, by the way, the origin of the word, so agriculture and culture are basically on the same side, at least in terms of etymology. But yes, I think it was also a very practical thing that it was first the Green Deal having been published. So everybody knew it already, at least those who are interested. And a bit later, there was another program coming up from the Commission, which is the New European Bauhaus movement. And this is exactly the program for culture and science, so for the two both areas to come together, to rethink lifestyle, to think together about future, about living spaces, about living places, what we could experiment together, and it's a very open process. This is what I really like. So it's not like maybe other EU programs or bigger programs where you have program lines and different well-defined areas. This is rather really a thinking process. So you can join, all of us can join in. There are a lot of ideas already having been collected, and there will be also some prizes and application opportunities, etc. But I think as the Bauhaus was some 100 years ago, kind of a thinking movement about the future of living together, which also includes solidarity, as Tanya Prashnik said, then we are on the right side. And it's really interesting, and really thousands of artists, NGOs, institutions have joined this new Bauhaus movement already. If you check the homepage, you will see. So with this, maybe I think we will have a kind of balance, which does not mean, of course, that we do not need more projects and also more communication about the Green Deal. And I'm quite convinced that our game is also a small step into this direction.
Thank you, Márton. And how does, for example, the academic perspective look like? Rafa, you are analyzing the implementation of the Green Deal. Which challenges did you encounter in that regard during your research? Are all stakeholders involved in that implementation process, including the cultural sector and civil society?
I think if you want something innovative, you can look at UK, for example, right now. They have these climate assemblies. This is basically where citizens, companies, culture could also join and form kind of like this discussion. I think this is what we call also democratic innovation, how you can include more stakeholders to the table. This is a practice already done in Hungary as well, in Budapest, and the Polish as well. So I think if we speak about V4, because this is the analysis which I conduct in my chapter, I'm analyzing the Visegrad countries and implementation of the EU, how they try to do it. And the Czech Republic and the Slovaks, they don't have the climate assemblies yet. I hope they could also catch up. And I think here, from an academic perspective, I'm, for example, looking at from a point how the EU can use its mechanisms to do that. If we speaking about social justice, that was a topic, we need to leave no one behind. Think about Polish coal workers in the former transition. Not the coal workers, I mean the rural people which were unemployed after the shock therapy in Poland or after this huge transition towards the EU. So you had unemployed people. Now with the coal workers, this is my thought, these could be the people who could be left behind now with the current transition. So what needs the EU to do? The EU can offer money, rewards for states to implement also their laws, which was mentioned, this something which costs money. So this is what the EU is already also doing. This is called the Just Transition Mechanism. So you have a fund, I think, of 75 billion euros, which is kind of a lot, and this is paid to the countries. If you agree to the 2050 aim, and that was what I mentioned, because I couldn't find Poland signing up for this 2050 aim, and I was looking and looking and looking, and finally in this May, actually they implemented it. I think so, at least. So basically, this allows them to receive the 100% of the fund. And this is something what the EU, I can analyze from a researcher perspective. This is a mechanism which might work to see if the countries can actually be forced to do it, even if they're not convenient with it. And you can also do the other way around, for example, negative conditionalism. This is like this political science expression, how to behave with countries which are not willing to keep what they're saying. So you can sanction them you can make conditionalities, and this is what the EU should probably focus on if they want to implement the European Green Deal in Central and Eastern Europe, because, and then I will close my thought, this is the region which is most vulnerable to this whole transition. You have a lot of fossil fuels, energies which are not straight thought through, like nuclear energy. Everything, okay, nuclear energy is good for, let's say, for the climate because it's emission free, but we don't know what we will do with the waste. So we need to implement renewable energy. So the countries are in front of this challenge to restructure this economy, restructure the energy mix, and they honestly they can't do it alone. So there is a need from a research perspective to say we need help from the EU, and bottom line, the EU can offer positive conditionality and negative conditionality in this, how it could be successful in the future.
I found it very interesting that you brought this social perspective up again, because both culture and civil society are often concerned when with social issues, and they get active when they perceive social injustice. So one of the main challenges seems to be to create the transformation of Europe in a socially just way. I mean, Friedrich Ebert Foundation is committed to the values of social democracy, and you already mentioned that it might be easier for those who have the financial resources to adapt. But what do you think, Gilla, how can we assure that nobody is left behind, that every single one is included in this transformation, making it not only a green, but also a fair transformation of Europe? And what could maybe culture and civil society do in order to integrate all social classes in climate action?
So I think that concerning the emission, there is some kind of an inequality. So not everyone is emitting the same amount. So there is some kind of an inequality, and also this transition might enhance or deepen even some inequalities from, as you said, the social democratic point of view. It's surely the state that should jump in, and that's actually also what most of Hungarians think would be the way to do. And surely also the European Union, as Rafael said, that there should be mechanisms, and there will be mechanisms that will help the implementation. The other thing, or the other aspect, is to involve people on the local level, as you mentioned, Márton. So I think that local issues where people or they even live through climate change is the way to activate them. I mean, to mobilize them, to involve them. So I think that's the way to call for a common action. And once again, I think that the cooperation of different spheres, let it be art, let it be social science, let it be academia, let it be municipalities. I think these merging points can be, I mean, joining forces is very important, and it always brings in new lights, or yeah.
And if we want to talking about including everybody, it's important to highlight once again that culture has a bridging function between climate policy and the people. So Márton, what can culture do to make the Green Deal inclusive? Because in the Green Deal, it says that the European Union wants to create a strong Green Deal diplomacy, and that it wants to mobilize all diplomatic channels. And in how far does this Green Deal diplomacy include cultural diplomacy? Do you think that the European Union is aware of the benefits and instruments of cultural diplomacy?
Yes, actually, I do. I think I do. Let's start at the expression inequality. I mean, inequality is also a matter of getting or access to information. And this is why we need a diversity of channels. And that's why I'm quite convinced that what we are doing with this game is a perfect cultural diplomacy issue. However, it probably does not seem to be one at first sight, but it is, because there are certain target groups and we know whom we are talking about. It is also, most importantly, rather the younger generation taking information from digital sources. So if this is the way to approach them, then we made a good job if we reach them, and that's why we need so many partners as well, etc., etc. On the other hand, of course, you can also go onto a very high level. I just had the pleasure to catch up from today's news that there is the Austrian World Summit now taking place in Vienna. And yesterday Arnold Schwarzenegger was one of the high-level guests, and we know whom he is. Everybody knows him. You can think of him what you want, but he comes to the media, and he was taking a bicycle tour through Vienna yesterday. And of course, this is all connected then to climate issues and what he says then, etc., etc. So this is also, of course, a channel, and there are a lot of people who are only listening to something like this and will never participate in the new European Bauhaus movement. But if Arnold Schwarzenegger says this as well, then probably at a certain, in a certain moment we will get this, put this puzzle together somehow. So to make it short, I think cultural diplomacy plays a really important role, and I also hope, and I see a chance and also some more space for cooperation there that may be also unique. The association of the European Cultural Institutes, there is a unique global headquarters in Brussels, but in so many cities we have unique clusters with all the European national cultural institutes, that this would be, in my opinion, also a wonderful platform to focus more, either through the new European Bauhaus or directly through the Green Deal, and connect it with cultural and cultural diplomacy issues. But Mr. Autengruber was already outlining a very good example from Austria as well. So there is a lot going on.
Excuse me.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wanted to say that, in my opinion, surely to reach out for people is very important to sensibilize, but the main stakeholders are actually the states and industry and economic players who bear responsibility. So we can talk about how people can be involved, how they could be mobilized, but the main issue, I mean, the main stakeholders and the main actors concerning the Green Deal are actually on a different level, and I think it's important to bear in mind.
And we have been mentioned some states already, the Visegrad countries. This is the region you focus on in your PhD thesis, Rafael. And we have already mentioned that there are some additional challenges maybe in this region. So how did you perceive it? Are there, is there a difference between Western Europe and the Visegrad countries when it comes to popularizing the Green Deal, when it comes to conveying it to the people? And I mean, you have been working on this Green Deal on a daily basis, and maybe since quite a lot of time. So did this change your perspective, and do you still make new observations on it?
There were several questions. I will start with the Visegrad countries. I again would emphasize that the main problem is the social justice. I could bring a very current topic. Czech Republic took action against Poland in case of environmental pollution because of a Polish coal plant near the Czech border. They took it to the European Court of Justice, and the Court of Justice said that it's legit, and then they are forced to close it. So you have Polish coal miners. What will you do with them? So for the cause of the European Green Deal is of course good, but then how will you figure it out? I think what is kind of unique in this region is basically you have everywhere populism. You have it in UK, you have it in France, in Germany, but what is kind of characteristic for the region is the democracies are struggling a bit, like to say it in a mild way. And such a thing could be used again. Yeah, look at these coal miners, and this happened actually in the past. And I will answer the question about what I learned about the European Green Deal during my studies. Look at the past, and you see what populist parties did to these unemployed people. So these unemployed people got their jobs at some point, and Poland came to the EU. But this narrative of these left alone people are used in current national election campaigns. Again and again, the bad West, like the capitalists, they destroyed our economy, and we should do something against it. And I think that could be also a problem for the future here in the region. If you have these coal miners again, or other social groups which will be left behind, that will be picked up probably again by populist parties. And this is a one-sided narrative. Of course I know that this is the problem. Everyone knows that it's a problem. That's because you have the just transition mechanism. So you can't imagine a transition being perfect. So you need to work on it in a constructive way. But these stories are not told in a constructive way. These are portrayed often in kind of false news, false narratives, which are just shown to wake the emotions of the people. And this is how, where I see the danger, how that could damage the political systems, how it could damage the whole European Green Deal as a whole. And coming back to your question, what I learned during the research, I was in the beginning fixated on how to solve this future problem. We have the 3 pillars, and we need to do that. We need to cut the emission, but then we don't know what will happen in the future. Sometimes it's just like a prognosis, but what we can do is looking into the past. So you can see how things were 20 years ago. For example, as the Central and Eastern European countries had the real struggle to join the EU. And you can just basically observe what were the successes and what were the defeats, let's say, and we can use this knowledge to implement it in the present, and I think we should learn from that.
Thank you. And what is the perspective of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation on this issue? Csilla, you are working for the Foundation's office in Budapest, where you are analyzing civil movements in Hungary, and you maintain relations to many civil society organizations all over the country. And what is your impression? Are there specific challenges for Hungary's civil society when it comes to climate action?
Well, I totally agree with Rafał. So I think he basically pointed out the main challenge, how to be green and at the same time socially just, how to broaden the narrative of how to be inclusive, how to broaden the narrative of being green, and I think that's the main challenge.
So let's now come towards the end of our panel discussion on how to better convey the European Green Deal to the European citizens. And I would like to ask all of you to think of one or two sentences, just some closing remarks, closing statements to make sure which message should be conveyed to all these students, to all these civil society members who are watching us now. So what do you think is particularly worth keeping in mind and in order to bring the Green Deal to the people? So maybe Martin, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you very much. So I think I can just repeat that I think it would be fantastic to use the magic of culture and arts for communicating and for emotionalizing such an important topic for the whole mankind. And let's use the means of cultural diplomacy to come closer to different target groups and also to enforce and strengthen European cooperation among countries and institutions.
Since this is a student event, I basically would convey a message to students, because like I could say something from a research perspective or I don't know, whatever. I think it's important to not be afraid of change. Don't fool yourself if you read something which is always this one-sided negative narrative. Just like same thing if you decide on studying something. You need sometimes to change a city. That comes along with some challenges, but in the end, somehow you have managed to do that. You, for example, here in Budapest. And this is also the thing, if we have some challenges, just like grab your friends, start a debate, and don't be afraid of change.
Okay, so my main message would be to discuss and to stay as broad as possible, not to narrow down concerning one narrative or another. There are many different facets of the same topic, and I think that it's important to talk about the Green Deal, but it's also important to talk about other aspects and solutions and ways of making our world somehow livable.
Thank you for these clear messages and maybe even encouraging messages and for this fruitful discussion, of course. So thank you all for your participation. I think we heard some very interesting and fresh ideas on the European Green Deal, on culture, on the connection with civil society. And it was a pleasure to have you all here, to listen to your messages, to listen to the messages of some additional experts, of course, we heard before them. So once again, I would like to express my special thanks to the Austrian Cultural Forum in Budapest, where we are right now, for hosting this event. And I hope you all enjoyed it and that you take along a lot of interesting new ideas and food for thought.
And keep in mind that you can follow our activities on Facebook and Instagram under the name Climate Game Changer, The Real Deal. There we will provide you some additional information and updates, and we will of course release the game. And we hope that all of you will enjoy playing with the game. It will be available in a few days.
Absolutely, we will keep you updated. We will upload the insights of the game, and many thanks to all of you. Many thanks for this interesting evening and for the fruitful discussions, and I wish you a very great evening and greetings from Budapest.
And don't forget, let's all be a climate game changer.